Welcome to today's deep dive. If you really want to understand how a 19th century heavy industrial iron foundry evolved into a cult favorite convenience store, well, you have to start with an ancient indigenous word for a migratory bird.
You really do.
Because if you strip away all that context and just listen to the sound of the brand's name, it honestly sounds like a toddler throwing a bit of a tantrum. Just a kid in a high chair, banging a cup, crying out for a drink of water. Wawa, Wawa.
Yeah, I mean, it is entirely nonsensical to the uninitiated ear. To anyone outside of its influence, it just sounds like complete baby talk.
Right. But then you look at the reality of what that word actually represents to millions of people. I mean, we aren't talking about a sippy cup here. We're talking about a beacon in the night.
Absolutely.
To anyone living on the East Coast and increasingly out in the Midwest, that word signifies this sanctuary of perfect coffee, custom hoagies, and late-night snacks.
It serves as a massive cultural dividing line, really. You are either utterly baffled by the word or you possess this fierce, almost religious loyalty to the places that bear its name.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission for this deep dive is to figure out exactly how a local convenience store managed to become this much of a cultural heavyweight.
Yeah, it's a huge shift.
We are looking at a place that inspires everyday shoppers to completely reroute their commutes. Like, casual customers are stopping in multiple times a week.
Sometimes multiple times a day, honestly.
Exactly. And it's not just everyday folks. You have massive celebrities, people like Кейт Uinslatet and Tina Fey, who are absolute crazed fanatics of the store. Some super fans even attempt to visit every single franchise in the country.
Which is a staggering undertaking given their footprint today. But I promise you, the story behind those 4 letters and the winged creature hovering on the signs above those gas pumps is a literal wild goose chase.
Oh, I bet.
It stretches back over 2 centuries, and it challenges you to rethink the origins of the everyday, mundane places you frequent.
A 2-century wild goose chase to explain a place where I can, order a meatball hoagie on a touchscreen at 2 in the morning. I am entirely on board.
It's quite the journey.
But to decipher that toddler-sounding name, we first need to look at the company's incredibly long-winded evolution, because they clearly did not start out slinging fried chicken and signature coffee brews.
Far from it. Actually, if you examine the historical timeline, the origins of this modern food market are completely divorced from the food service industry altogether.
Right. We are rewinding the clock way, way back here.
Yeah.
Past the touchscreens, past the modern gas pumps, all the way back to the year 1803.
1803, yeah.
Picture this, it's not a brightly lit, welcoming convenience store. It is an iron factory in New Jersey.
Heavy industrial manufacturing. We're talking sparks, soot, massive logistics, and smelting iron.
Pure heavy industry. You have an operation built entirely around forging iron and stays that way for nearly 100 years.
Right.
But then we hit 1902. The owner, a man named George Wood, executes what I can only describe as a masterclass in reading the economic tea leaves.
Yeah, he really did. Because by 1902, the local iron boom in that region was busting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, larger industrialization and massive steel operations out west were beginning to dominate the market. Wood realized pretty quickly that keeping a localized iron foundry afloat was going to be a losing battle against geography and scale.
But Wood notices a localized inefficiency right in his own backyard, right? There is a booming suburban population growing in the region, and they have a very specific daily problem.
Exactly.
They lack consistent access to safe, pasteurized milk. At the time, raw milk supply chains were notoriously unreliable and, honestly, often dangerous regarding public health.
And that is where Wood's background in heavy industry becomes his greatest asset. He didn't just buy a few cows and start a quaint farm.
Right, he went bigger.
Way bigger. He applied factory-level logistics to agricultural supply chains. He recognized that his core competency wasn't necessarily iron forging. His true skill was managing heavy local supply networks. He just swapped out the iron ore for dairy.
Wow. Wood essentially practices what modern business schools might call asset agnosticism.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
He wasn't emotionally attached to the product itself. He was attached to the infrastructure of delivery. Wait, going from smelting iron to delivering milk is a massive leap.
It's a huge pivot.
It really is like a modern-day Silicon Valley tech pivot.
Yeah.
How did this hyper-local dairy operation manage to scale into the giant we know today?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at the underlying DNA of the company, which is a profound capacity for rapid adaptation.
Okay.
George Wood's pivot to milk production and home delivery in 1902 was about meeting a specific consumer need at the doorstep with absolute reliability. By applying strict industrial standards to dairy pasteurization, he built an infrastructure of supreme trust.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, when you are the dairy monger delivering safe milk directly to families every single morning, you become an essential, trusted pillar of their daily routine.
Which brings us to the next massive cultural shift. Fast forward to 1964. The post-war boom has completely reshaped the American landscape, and consumer habits are shifting dramatically.
Right, the traditional dairy delivery model is starting to wane.
Because of supermarkets.
Exactly. You have the rise of the modern, massive supermarket, widespread adoption of home refrigeration, and critically, suburban car culture.
Right. People are driving everywhere.
Yeah, so people don't need the milkman coming to their door anymore. They have a car in the driveway and a refrigerator that can keep a gallon of milk fresh for a week.
Wood's grandson is now running the family business, and he recognizes the writing on the wall. The delivery trucks are becoming obsolete.
Right.
So he takes that established consumer trust and opens the very first physical Wawa food market in Folsom, Pennsylvania.
In 1964.
Yeah, 1964. He essentially solves the 1960s suburban grocery problem by putting the dairy on a shelf in a brick-and-mortar location.
But he doesn't stop with just moving milk indoors. The scale of their subsequent expansion into a broader retail model is incredible.
How fast did they grow?
Well, by 1972, which is less than a decade after opening that first food market, they had opened 100 more stores across New Jersey and Delaware.
Wait, 100 stores. I buy the pivot from delivery trucks to physical stores because people always need a quick place to grab milk.
Sure.
But jumping from a trusted local dairy counter to frying chicken and making custom hoagies, that feels like a massive risk that could have easily alienated their core dairy demographic.
It definitely could have.
How did they bridge that gap so successfully?
By leveraging the halo effect of their pristine dairy reputation. Think about the economics of convenience stores. Selling milk and basic staples is a notoriously low-margin game.
Right.
To survive and thrive in retail, you need high-margin items. Prepared foods, fresh coffee, customized sandwiches.
But convincing a 1960s consumer to buy hot food from a gas station or a convenience mart was a tough sell. I mean, the perception of convenience store food back then was abysmal.
Precisely. Unless the food is coming from the people who have been safely delivering your family's milk for 3 generations.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. The consumer psychology works like this. If their dairy is pure, safe, and high quality, their fried chicken and hoagies must be held to the same rigorous standard.
Whoa.
They use the absolute trust built from 60 years of dairy delivery to bypass the stigma of convenience store food.
That makes perfect sense. They watched what the modern consumer was demanding, speed, convenience, and ready-to-eat meals, and they delivered it under a banner of absolute reliability.
Exactly.
It's the ultimate lesson in not getting too stubbornly attached to your original product. If your milk customers suddenly want hamburgers and hoagies, you figure out how to give them the best hoagie possible.
And that infrastructure of trust is exactly what allowed them to morph into the convenience powerhouse they are today.
Okay, so we've established the mechanics behind this booming Pennsylvania dairy empire turning into a retail giant. But that brings us to the core mystery of this whole deep dive. The name. Setting up a modern retail store requires intense brand trust. And yet, instead of naming it something authoritative like Woods Market or Keystone Dairy, they choose a name that sounds like a toddler asking for a drink.
Right.
Why name the headquarters the town and the business Wawa?
It is the question that plagues everyone outside of their immediate geographical footprint. When you don't know the origin, the word just hangs there without any context.
And of course, whenever there is a linguistic mystery without clear context, the internet steps in to try and solve it with a conspiracy theory.
Oh, always.
My absolute favorite internet hypothesis is that Wawa is actually a very neat, very handy acronym. People have theorized for years that it stands for the Worldwide Agricultural Wholesome Association.
A very tidy, completely fabricated explanation that pops up on message boards every few years.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I actually just laughed out loud reading that acronym because Worldwide Agricultural Wholesome Association sounds exactly like a slightly sinister corporation from a dystopian sci-fi movie.
It really does.
Like you walk to the back of the store, past the iced tea coolers, and find out they are secretly manufacturing clones or something. It's just so corporate and sterile.
It definitely lacks a certain historical poetry, and the truth is, it's not an acronym at all.
Right.
The actual etymology is much deeper, much more intriguing, and it completely grounds the brand in the natural history of the North American continent.
So if it's not a clunky sci-fi acronym, what is the actual origin? Because we've established the founder's last name was Wood, so it isn't a family name.
No, not at all. The word Wawa actually traces its roots back to the Ojibwe, an indigenous people whose ancestral lands primarily span the Great Lakes region, extending down into parts of the American Midwest and Northeast.
Okay.
In the Ojibwe language, the word translates to wild goose, and historically the pronunciation was much closer to Wayway.
Wayway. That is fascinating. But I'm looking at a map in my head right now, and the Great Lakes region is quite a distance from the Delaware County, Pennsylvania dairy farm where all this started.
It is.
How does a Native American word for a wild goose from the Great Lakes end up defining a Pennsylvania iron-turned dairy dynasty?
What's fascinating here is the intersection of language, local geography, and historical migration patterns. Long before George Wood and his dairy business ever arrived in the area, the specific region of Pennsylvania where they set up shop was a major natural stomping ground for migratory birds.
Oh, because of the Atlantic Flyway.
Exactly. The Atlantic Flyway is a major north-south flight path for migratory birds in North America. The area in Delaware County was dense, with massive flocks of Canada geese using the local waterways to rest during their long journeys.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Yeah, because the area was so intrinsically linked to the birds, the local town itself had been named after the geese, utilizing the Ojibwe word. The town was Wawa, Pennsylvania.
So the land was named for the wild geese by the indigenous population, and then decades later, the Wood family simply adopted the existing name of the town they were operating their dairy out of.
Precisely. They inherited the legacy of the town's name, which was inherently tied to the land's natural history.
That is incredible. But what is truly striking is that despite the massive nationwide footprint of the brand today, this rich indigenous ancestry remains almost completely under the radar.
It really does.
You have millions of people interacting with this brand, drinking the coffee, pumping the gas, and very few are aware of the deep cultural and linguistic history they're invoking. I mean, every time you tell a friend you're going on a Wawa run, you're effectively saying you are going on a wild goose run.
Yeah, it highlights how seamlessly historical language can be absorbed and repurposed by modern commerce, often losing its original context in the minds of the consumers.
And once you know that the word means wild goose, the company's entire visual branding suddenly clicks into place.
It really does.
It explains the logo perfectly. It was never just a random bird they picked out of a hat to look outdoorsy.
No, not at all. The avian identity has been central practically from the beginning of their dairy era. They embraced the translation of their namesake from the start.
Right, the iconic Canada Goose logo first appeared on their glass dairy bottles way back in the early 1900s. It was a literal visual representation of their adopted name.
Exactly.
And then that logo evolved over the decades as the company shifted from milk trucks to modern retail. In 1974, it took on the highly stylized familiar form that everyone recognizes today, the goose in mid-flight against that bright, solid gold background.
It acts as a visual anchor. Even as the company modernized its stores, introduced touchscreen ordering, and expanded its menu, they kept the goose. It provides a subconscious sense of continuity and tradition for the consumer.
They lean into it so hard they even have a mascot.
Oh yeah, Wally.
A giant plush Canada goose named Wally. Wally makes appearances at all the new store grand openings and community events. It's like this giant walking reminder, constantly bringing the brand's historic Pennsylvania past right into the current, rapidly expanding modern picture.
It's a brilliant piece of visual continuity that ties a rapidly modernizing company back to its 19th century agricultural roots.
So what does this all mean? We look at Wawa today, and the growth isn't just impressive, it is staggering.
It really is.
It is no longer just this quirky, hyper-local East Coast secret that only people in Pennsylvania and New Jersey understand. Foreign tourists are actively seeking it out, catching wind of the mouth-watering new menu items and the highly efficient touchscreen ordering systems just through pure word of mouth.
Right.
I mean, they have established over 330 stores in Florida alone.
The Florida expansion is particularly notable because it proved the brand's culture could survive outside its home territory.
And they aren't stopping there. There's a steady, highly aggressive stream of grand openings spreading deep into the Midwest and the South, into states like Indiana, Ohio, and Tennessee. They're pushing far beyond the boundaries of the Atlantic flyway.
And that aggressive nationwide expansion strategy is where you find the true narrative symmetry of this entire story. If you think about the fundamental nature of the Canada goose itself.
It's a migratory bird. Its entire existence is based on movement and adapting to new environments across the continent.
Exactly. There is a beautiful, almost poetic irony in the brand's current trajectory.
Yeah.
Just as the wild Canada goose is defined by its massive continent-spanning migration, the Wawa brand is now migrating across the entire country. And as it expands, it carries with it a name that honors both the geese that traveled those ancient flyways and the indigenous people who observed them and named them.
It really is incredible when you step back and look at the sheer scope of the journey you just took us on. I mean, we started in an 1803 heavy industrial iron factory in New Jersey, dealing with soot and smelting.
Right.
We watched a genius logistical pivot to a hyper-local horse-drawn milk delivery service in Pennsylvania to meet the needs of a booming suburb.
And then witness the transformation of that delivery infrastructure into a physical retail space to survive the era of the supermarket and the automobile.
We threw out the old glass milk bottles to make way for customized, high-margin hoagies, touch screens, and a cult-like celebrity following that treats a convenience store like a community hub.
Yeah.
And underneath all of that modern retail science, we discovered an Ojibwe word for a wild goose that has somehow grown into a beloved nationwide phenomenon.
It's a perfect reminder that the everyday places we take for granted, the places we rush in and out of to grab a coffee, often hold the most complex, surprising histories. We just rarely stop to look at the name on the building.
So true.
But this massive expansion we are seeing today raises an important question, something for you to mull over the next time you find yourself standing under that glowing golden goose sign.
Oh, I always love a good lingering thought. Lay it on us.
As Wawa continues its massive migration across the country, replacing its historic, deeply rooted Pennsylvania dairy origins with fancy touchscreens and a nationwide footprint, does a brand inherently lose its hyperlocal hometown identity?
Oh, wow.
Or does the enormous success of Wawa out of state prove that community and culture are themselves migratory, able to fly, adapt, and take root wherever the flock decides to land next?
Wow. From what sounds like a toddler's cry for a cup of water, to an absolute holy land of convenience, to an existential question about the migration of culture itself, it really is a wild goose chase.